Good morning.
Good morning.
Nothing like a little technical challenges when you get trying to get started, huh? How we doing?
Definitely.
Good.
Good, good. Good morning, Bria. Good morning, Nick, Ryan.
How you doing?
So what are we talking about today? What are we gonna talk about today? I like the title. All companies want to grow globally quick. Those global sales catch up quick, right? I think we're seeing that all the time is that organizations are scaling fast. And why don't we kind of talk about what we're going to do today?
Awesome.
Well, why don't we go ahead and do some introductions. Welcome to the Global CFO Playbook. Billing, planning, and taxes across borders. We do have 40 people attending, which is great. And maybe we'll just do some intros. We'll kind of talk about what we'll do today. We'll probably do some practical insights, do some demos, do some Q&A, and then talk about just the international elements of each platform. So with that said, Ria, why don't we do a quick intro for you and Sequence?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here, and thanks everybody for dialing in. I'm Rhea. I'm co-founder and CEO at Sequence. We're building the AI native revenue automation platform for CFOs. It's a lot of jargon. Really, what we're helping finance teams do is to automate the order to cash process with kind of much more workflow automation and insight and visibility built in. We're solving the problem that sales teams close custom contracts. Today, teams are growing fast, lots of new contracts, upsells, renewals in the business, lots of different pricing terms and contract structures deployed. And that can create a ton of mess for finance teams. So we really kind of streamline the workflow, help capture that contract data, make billing, invoicing, revenue recognition, really kind of seamless, intuitive, and ultimately help companies capture more revenue. So excited to show you the platform.
Want more revenue, Ria? Come on.
Don't we all want more revenue?
We
And
all
I'll
want
just
more
add
revenue.
before starting Sequence, I previously built another software company, which I exited to a public company, and this was a very big pain point for me in the first business that I was building. So decided to dedicate my life towards solving the problem for others.
I love it. Thank you, Ria. Ryan, why don't you intro yourself and Abacum?
Yeah. Hey, great to meet everybody. I'm Ryan McDonald. I'm the head of partnerships here at Abacum. I've been in SaaS for about 20 years and in the FP&A space for, I guess, 8 years now. I helped build another company from zero to Series B. And the problem that we had there was the product couldn't handle a lot of multi-entity, a ton of dimensionality, um, multi-currency. And that's really the complexity that's needed once you start to grow as a business. You have more entities, you're international, and I met the founders and saw the product here at Abacum a couple years ago, and am thrilled that we're the AI native mid-market FP&A platform, leading recently Series Series B through scale and hundreds of customers across 40 different countries, and excited to share more about the platform with you today.
Love it, Ryan. Yeah, once you get all that revenue, I guess you got to start planning for it, right? Everybody wants to know what you're going to do, what the budget looks like, all that good stuff. All right, Nick. Well, I think once you start getting revenue and you plan for it, there's this unfortunate truth that you got to have taxes that go along with that. But as accountants, that's just we get it. So, Nick, why don't you talk about you and Sphere?
Awesome. Yeah, I guess I'm the tax man. So my background is I have a finance background. I had a marketplace as well as my second business was an online marketplace. We were selling globally, had lots of tax compliance issues. So now Sphere, the second business that I started is an AI powered cross-border compliance platform. We currently focus on particular type of compliance, which is indirect tax, so sales tax, VAT, GST. We are starting to do more than that, but that's what we are known for right now. And we're very much known for the international side of what we do. We help some of the fastest growing companies in the world, companies like Lovable, Replit, Deal, 11 Labs, Val, So very well accustomed to cross-border compliance issues.
Good. Well, looking forward to diving to all of that and your platforms. My name is Dean. I am the technology industry and Silicon Valley market leader at Armanino. We're the 18th largest CPA and accounting and consulting firm in the nation. We love the office of the CFO, and we love new technology, native AI technology that disrupts spreadsheets, disrupts all the old things that we used to do. Love all of this new technology. And with that, maybe we can start to dive into some demos. Ria, do you want to kind of jump in a little bit and let's talk about Sequence and how you help companies across borders?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me jump into a demo. As Nick was speaking, I guess we share a lot of customers, and before kind of showing you the product, I think it's really interesting to see for us. We service revenue collection and revenue automation for so many companies that are just growing so fast today. And it's not only growing fast in terms of new markets, it's also adding new product lines, changing pricing as they add new agentic features, and just see a ton of agility in sales teams and the way companies are kind of selling today. And one interesting observation is like these finance teams have to keep up; they have to keep pace with that scaling growth. And so, yeah, also working with some great businesses, companies like Legora, 11x, Bridge, Runway, Bill.com, and really, yeah, for me, it's cool to ultimately be the platform kind of powering that growth. So with that, I will jump into the product. Can everybody see my screen? Awesome. So I guess maybe, we're talking about sales teams moving fast. A good place to start is to think about that upstream sales order, that upstream contract, and how we capture the data from that to make the finance team's lives easier. So I'm going to jump into my watchtower here, and this really think of this as a place where we can have oversight on all agent work, and really kind of full auditability of everything our agents are doing for us. So I'm going to drop in a few example sales contracts. Let's imagine, the sales team just signed these contracts, or renewals or upsells. You can also forward these into Sequence, and you'll see now that I've just uploaded these in, and our contract agent is working in real time to extract the terms of this contract. Typically takes maybe 30 seconds to a minute. And while this is happening, I'm just going to quickly jump into our product catalog view here. Under the hood in Sequence, you essentially can build a product catalog that really houses any type of product SKU pricing structure associated with that product SKU. So that can be, different types of usage-based pricing models that you might have in the business, seat-based pricing models, one-off fees, and different billing frequencies. Essentially, kind of however you price, we can recreate that in this very intuitive product catalog. And so I'm going to jump back into my watchtower and see that these contracts now are ready for review. And the reason I showed you that product catalog is because this is a really important part of this agent being able to extract these terms perfectly. So obviously we've pulled out the customer details, we've matched that to the record in your CRM. And then we get to the kind of pricing piece. And I won't go into kind of every detail here of what's happened, but you can see that, there's a one-time setup fee, there's this usage-based pricing model with this minimum commit, and then you've got this kind of 1 month trial period where you get 100% discount in that trial period. So you kind of have a 1 month and 23-month duration in the contract. And what you'll see here is that this agent has correctly pulled out these two different phases in the contract. So you have a 1 month phase here and a 23-month duration that follows that. And it's also pulled out the products, because this is the first time I'm doing this, I can actually match it to those products in my product catalog. So this is the implementation fee that it's pulled out. And then this is my kind of API-based API calls product that we have in the business. And the reason having that referenceable product catalog is really important is because not only is this kind of agent extracting the terms of this contract, but we really can then understand how to deterministically bill for it. So, you understand the billing frequency, you understand the usage metric that this product is tied to, so that we understand, what usage actually needs to be billed for. And I think, one thing I'll say is you see lots of noise in the market about sort of AI-driven contract intake, and the fact that you can kind of ingest any contract and automate billing for that. The truth is like LLMs, yes, can extract data, but you have to have the confidence that there is the robust pricing and billing engine under the hood to actually be able to drive accurate invoicing outcomes. So 20 seconds to review this contract. I'm going to actually automatically now create the billing subscription off the back of this. And if I jump back in here and actually jump in to view this schedule now, so this is now the billing subscription that's been created off the back of that contract. Again, you can see exactly those terms pulled out, the sort of minimum commit included here, the kind of trial period where you've got 100% discount. And I will start this subscription. And this is basically now going to enable me to automatically generate invoices off the back of that. So you see that kind of contract to invoice workflow with really kind of full transparency on exactly, what terms are getting kind of invoiced for. And so let's just refresh this and it should start generating my invoices. There we go. Okay, so it's generated my first my next set of invoices, and you can see these are in draft status. And if I click into one of these, there's a ton in here, but I mean, the first thing to note is obviously, we can represent invoices in a way that makes kind of tracking usage really intuitive. And you can see here, that correct rate has been applied. Obviously, there's no quantity yet because the usage hasn't been incurred, but in real time, as that usage streams in, you'll see that invoice value grow. And obviously at the end of the month, it will be finalized to send. Very easy to make changes on these invoices. So if something happens that requires you to add a line item, you can again pull that in from your product catalog. So if I wanted to add, let's say, a monthly platform fee, I can very easily kind of key that in here. And all of these kind of changes that you make are sort of captured in an activity log. So now that I've just made this change, next time I come in, you'll see here that you have a timestamp and audit log of that line item change. You can also review kind of the invoice against the contract. I don't have one added in here, but you'll be able to compare those things. And naturally, we have integrations with QuickBooks, Salesforce, really any ERP or CRM that you're using, as well as the ability to toggle on card payments or Stripe payments if you're accepting payments that way. Companies, will ultimately kind of manage all of their kind of invoicing in sequence. So very easy to sort of jump into a saved view, for example, and kind of see all of the invoices upcoming in a billing run, be able to bulk send those out and very quickly kind of review and cycle through those invoices as well. We also have a revenue recognition module. So if you think about it, Sequence is able to kind of understand these custom and complex contracts that you have in the business and enable you to automate journal reports and track kind of revenue recognition schedules against those contracts in the business, really be able to define recognition method at a product level. And coming back to that deterministic point, it's really important that like billing, invoicing, revenue recognition is calculated in a deterministic way. This is not kind of LLMs throwing a shot at it to see what it spits out. But we have agents supporting in this workflow. So if you want to interrogate that data and understand, why revenue was recognized in a certain way. So, let's just say my customer incident.io added 5 seats mid-month. Like, how does that affect my deferred revenue schedule? And you will be able to kind of understand exactly how that journal report, that journal entry was created. Agent can also support with things like checklists and kind of compliance checklists so that you can make sure that you are audit ready for every contract and can have a historical trace of every one of those checklists in sequence. And then the last thing I'll show you before handing back over is that um, we have launched kind of a series of agents now that help our customers essentially automate more of this work, get better insight into what's happening across, products, pricing, revenue in the business. And I'll very quickly show you our Dunning agent, which actually launches publicly in a few weeks. So this is really kind of your human co-pilot to chase unpaid invoices. I'm going to add this agent in here. Let's name it as well. So, and again, ton of detail here, and I won't go into all of it, but we have trained this agent with a bunch of system level instructions. But kind of more critically, what you can do here is give it your own kind of business instructions. So here I'm just going to put a natural language prompt in to say, automate follow-ups after, an invoice is 7, 14, 21 days overdue. My agent is going to generate this workflow for me and draft those emails, and you'll be able to see those here. But what's really great is that outside of that defined workflow, you will always have kind of exceptions to this. So, you might want to say to this agent, don't send automatic payment reminders if the invoice is over 100K or if the customer signed up in the last 3 months. And you can continue to feed these instructions, or if a customer is marked in a certain way in Salesforce, put them on this workflow. And so really kind of think of this as sort of your co-pilot to continue working with to optimize how you collect cash. And when I run this agent, you can see everything this agent is doing in real time. So every invoice reminder that's getting sent out, and really ultimately how that DSO figure is tracking. And coming back to that watchtower view, which I showed you earlier, where essentially you're able to kind of get oversight on all agent activity, and agents can pull you in when they need review. You'll see here if there are exceptions where an agent is not sending an automatic reminder, it will flag to you why. So, this one is being flagged because it's now kind of past 28 days, and that might have been an exception I gave the agent. So think of this as kind of a suggest mode rather than an act mode, where it's going to suggest a follow-up, but kind of loop you in to take that action so you can review that email before sending it off. And I will stop there because conscious of time, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavor of how we help companies automate revenue operations. Didn't talk a huge amount about the international component, but we can get into that later.
I love that, Ria. Not only do we gotta bill, recognize the revenue correctly, and then we gotta collect it, right? Like cash is always good. We know every office of the CFO loves that cash, so that is great. I think Ryan and Abacum, we're going to talk about how we can kind of plan for what this revenue is going to look like. Why don't we kind of jump into Abacum here?
Awesome. I'll give you a couple slides and then we'll jump right into demo. A little bit about Abacum. We raised a little over $100 million. Global company, like I mentioned earlier, clients across 40 different countries, headquarters in New York, large office in Barcelona. And we have a partner ecosystem that's global too. So we work with strategic partners that can also help advise, and maybe some of the partners that you're working with today. We are cemented as the leader in the mid-market for AI native next gen FP&A, and more than FP&A. So I'm going to take you through some use cases today. We'll look at some of the core use cases like automating a lot of the reporting, departmental budgeting, headcount planning, right? But then it's also your revenue planning, sales ops planning. We're connecting to all your different data sources, including your ERP, Salesforce or HubSpot, right? Bringing in all your funnel metrics so you can measure from MQ lead to MQL, SQO down to close, and all the conversion rates, and run different scenarios against models like that too. And I'll show you what it looks like to model and point out some of the really cool AI native capabilities as well within the platform. We work with hundreds of companies all over the world. A lot of the companies that we work with are going to have anywhere from, 100 employees all the way up to thousands of employees. So we really focus on the mid-market. There's still a ton of complexity. There's a lot of complexity that's needed in the mid-market, especially because of how fast mid-market companies are growing and changing. You could argue that you even need more flexibility within an FP&A platform versus an enterprise platform. And we balance that flexibility with very, very strong ease of use and a beautiful user experience. So not only is this great for finance users to own, but it also makes it easy for non-finance users to come in and collaborate. So you're getting the most out of your platform. All right, let's jump over to Abacum. So I've logged in and I'm brought into Abacum. You should be able to see my screen here. Um, I'm in full admin mode, so you'll see integrations, and we have integrations with all your different ERPs, CRMs, HRIS systems, actually data warehouses. So you can plug your data in very quickly. Data sets, we have an ETL layer where you can even manage your data. So it's not like a black box, and you can do transformations. In fact, our most used AI feature, which isn't the sexiest looking thing, is sitting in the ETL layer because it always is cleaning your data. It's looking for misspellings in your vendors, like Microsoft can be misspelled 5 times and show up 5 times as 5 different vendors. Well, the AI will automatically pick that up, fix misspellings, or Brex or Ramp will put the vendor into the memo field. The AI models will automatically grab the vendor, tag it correctly. So it helps you clean your data, standardize your dimensions. So customer from your CRM equals customer from your ERP, and so on. I'm going to spend most of the time today in the spaces section, and also we'll take a look at modeling really quick. So if I'm looking at a space here, I'm in this performance review, but I'm going to switch over to a board report. This is a good example of something you have to produce every month. I was just at an event last week doing a fireside chat with Evan Pincus, who's the VP of Cortex, VP of Finance and Operations. This is one of the use cases, 350 person Series C company, and they run with like 3 people in finance and accounting, maybe 4 total. And every month he just closes the books, shares out this space with his board. You can even print and download PDF, and he's able to like automate a lot of this, and then you can collaborate. So this is a good example of, I'm looking at, hey, there's a P&L here. I've set up some views for expenses. I even have some loans, so I want to get my covenant KPIs front and center for the board. And then I get it into like what's most important, that ARR growth. I can see we can define all your calculations for CAC, LTV. You can define 10 different ways you want to look at CAC in the system, or contracted ARR, whatever your KPIs are. You can start to get into like your customer, your revenue data. I'm drilling down to the dimensions now, across down all the way to customer. I can see targets and actuals by customer here. I even have my board deck embedded in here. So we have bidirectional integrations with Google Sheets and Excel. So you can also update your PowerPoints and your Google Slides automatically with your refresh data every month or every quarter before you need to present to the board. As well as like I talked about how Evan shares this out. This is how he invites the board in. And so before that, you need to, right, you want to save that as into your folder for the month. And you might want to provide some analysis before you write it up. Leverage AI. So I can just do a quick summary on this actuals versus forecast by department, and Abacum will automatically analyze the data and then start to produce a summary for you. And then you can post, you can edit, right? And then share it out, comment at people. I can even drill down, like the data behind here has multiple dimensions. And we'll talk a little bit about, we've got subsidiaries across all different countries. So I could have this focus just on the subsidiaries if I want, right? So again, help you produce your analysis is a really great example of AI. And in this case, it's going to do it across your multinational companies that you want to provide more commentary on. When you get into the reporting too, like this is a good example. Hey, I'm bringing in entities, right? I've got Spain, UK, US. This could be coming from any ERP. You could have 5 different, we work with a lot of companies, again, globally. In APAC, you get all these companies that have a bunch of Zero files, a NetSuite file. They're all plugging it into one instance of Abacum, and we can standardize all those general ledgers into one place and make it easy to standardize the entities too. So if I'm looking at like sales and marketing here, I'm drilling down, kind of an interesting structure. I would typically put maybe the entity at the top here, right? You can see I also was planning all the way down to the vendor level. So we want finance to be able to make changes quickly and own it, here's an example how I might be the person running finance and I want to update this report, especially the ways that the dimensions show up in there, the structure of that. This is going to look really easy because that's how we intend it to be for our users. But if you've ever used a system in the past, what I'm about to show you is non-trivial. We're going to take subsidiary, we're going to move it to the top in this dimension structure. I'm going to put department under it, and the system will react immediately and restructure your dimensions. Now, if you've used systems like second gen platforms or tried to do stuff like this in Excel, systems will require you to go recode the backend and the architecture to set up the dimensions differently. In Abacum, every table can have the flexibility of its own dimensions, and you can see how quickly it reacts and sets it up. I can now post this, right? Share it out. I also want to know, what's behind this data too. I'm obviously way over budget for sales and marketing. I can right click and go right into the transaction level detail, right? So I can see it by entity. Now it makes more sense on what's being presented there. So this is a great example of a report I need to produce on a regular basis for internal or external stakeholders. Another great use case is these spaces aren't just a dashboard, aren't just for reports. These spaces are for workflow and tasks and collaboration, and it's pervasive throughout the platform. Here's my battle station as the finance leader. I can see everything I need to see in one space. In fact, if you want to build a new, you just hit /, you can build a new table. I can build this table in 2 minutes and have it up and running for you guys. So really easy to build up tables. And now I'm going to switch hats to an operator, right? I'm the head of marketing. I have a space. One of the most simple things, but also challenging, is I just want my operators, my head of marketing, to be self-serve and see their budget in real time so they can own that. And this is a great example of where now you have more flexibility to provide real-time information to your department heads. They can come in and see that transaction level detail. They can leave comments right on the cell at you. It'll Slack you, it'll email you, it'll save it on this table too, right? Also in the space. And as I go further down, now that I know I'm over budget, I can even come in and I can adjust my budget on what I'm going to spend later. I can add a new vendor in. Once I add that vendor in, I can take this from in progress to review, and that'll send it back to finance. And here's a workflow I've already set up, right, for approval and review, and then it can add it into the budget. And I mentioned tasks here. I've got tasks set up to remind people to come in, right? I've got commentary to give them instructions as well. The whole thing, you can apply that to headcount planning use cases, sales planning use cases as well. The last thing I'm going to show you here, just given that we have limited time today, is just a model. I've got a bunch of different models set up in the system, but this is how you build your formulas. We have a full in-memory calculation engine. Again, if you have some stuff you want to leave in Excel or Google Sheets, we can do bidirectional pushes for your models there. But this is where you get the real value. So you can start to drive scenarios and instances, right? You can roll your forecast with a couple pushes of a button. You'll see here I've got my actuals flowing through to my forecast. I've got some formulas built up here for like how I want to define actuals, or I've got KPIs built up. There's EBITDA, right? I'm going to go down and just show you. There's advertising spend. I don't have a formula yet for this. See, there's no forecast. So if I want to build a formula, it's pretty easy. It's kind of like Excel. All right, let me move my screen here. Say this starts to even guide you last month, right? Plus, so it'll start to guide me. I can build it up. It's really easy to adopt this. It's another advantage and a difference with Abacum is the ability for finance to pick up how you can write formulas, or I can just use natural language, just like average of the last 2 months, and use natural language. It'll automatically give me the formula. I can apply that. Or my last example, AI forecast. You have a few different kind of methodologies that you can apply here. This is going to use AI and ML to generate this forecast. I'll go ahead and just hit generate. And this will automatically generate a forecast looking at seasonality, some of the historical trends, and apply that for it. And I can save and apply that too. So I'm going to stop there. But great example of how you can do all your reporting, internal, external, flexibility to own it yourself. A few great examples of AI. And then we already started looking at the different entities across reporting. You can plan for any entity, any dimension that you need to. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Before we jump into some Q&A, we all know that part of, like we talked about earlier, revenue and billing and receipts is taxes. And especially when you're going global, Nick, let's talk about Sphere and how you're going to help us here.
I am on mute. Okay, let's do it. So basically, look, we are the AI native tax compliance solution of choice for some of the fastest growing companies, as I mentioned before. So right now we manage the end-to-end compliance for indirect tax. So that's registration, calculation, filing, and remittance. We're rapidly expanding into other cross-border compliance areas too. But indirect tax is what we're known for right now. Now, just before I jump into the demo, I just want to mention, like, if there's three things you take away about what makes Sphere unique, it's these three things, right? The first is we built for the last 2 years direct integrations in over 100 tax authorities around the world. That allows us to fully automate all of the compliance workflows in that particular region. And that is very different to a lot of other vendors who will outsource that to local service partners. It gives us that full end-to-end automation. So that's the first thing. Second thing, we've built this AI native tax engine. A lot of fancy words. What it really means is we basically have this technology that ingests, codifies, and monitors tax law around the world to provide the right treatment to your product, regardless of where you sell it. And that is a game changer for us. It means you don't have to do manual tax research. We still have experts in the loop that review everything. That allows our models to get smarter and smarter. And it also allows, and the other thing that's exciting about that system is that it's expanding into these adjacent cross-border compliance areas like input tax, withholding tax, import duties and tariffs, and e-invoicing. And lastly, very much made for fast-growing companies. A lot of shared customers across Abacum and Sequence. And yeah, that means that we have native integrations with all the major billing systems, and we also have a very different pricing model that those companies really like. We have flat rate per region per month. So I'll quickly show you the platform. So the way this works is super easy to get set up on Sphere. It's less than 24 hours. Like literally, we get you set up in the initial setup meeting. We connect to your transaction or billing platform, as well as your payroll system or your HRIS. That allows us to pull in all your transaction data and employee information so that we can give you a view globally of your exposure around the world. And you can see here, we will be able to bucket every region into a few key buckets. We'll be able to tell you where you're approaching exposure. So this is, how you're tracking towards certain thresholds based on your transaction and employee information. If you trigger any of these thresholds, you're going to go into the exposed bucket. And this tells you the date at which you became exposed for indirect tax, as well as the amount of tax you haven't collected since that date. So that's what you owe the tax authority. That's the tax liability. So hopefully these aren't too big. But if you do have a few exposed regions, this is sort of where these differentiators come into play. So as I said, one of the big things that makes us different are the local rails into these tax authorities. What that means is you can register for any tax authority around the world all through Sphere. You never have to touch one of these clunky tax portals again that make you want to rip your eyes out. It's all here on the one platform. You fill in the information, we go ahead and get you registered, and you can turn on tax calculation straight away. Through those same local rails, we also take care of all of your returns and filings. So as you can see, we do these returns globally. We generate them in the region, in the format that the region requires. You can interrogate the underlying transaction data straight from your billing provider, whether that's Sequence or someone else. All you have to do is come in here and approve it. And we submit it for you through those local rails, but we also take all those pesky international wires that you have to send to all the tax authorities around the world. We also have that covered. So we have embedded payments in Sphere. You connect your account and we do one pool of all of your tax due across all jurisdictions. And we take care of all the international wires in local currency to those tax authorities. That, for someone who's done a lot of international returns, is a huge time saver. So that's another sort of way in which we really differentiate on that international front. We talked about how the rails help automate, the registration, the filing, but what about calculation? So just like any other tax vendor, what's going to happen is you're going to pull in that product catalog like we saw in Ria's sequence demo. We'll pull in all your products in a sphere. You're going to assign a tax code just like you would with an Avalara or an Anrock or etc. And basically that tax code allows us to figure out whether a transaction is taxable or not in the moment the transaction is happening. But how that tax code gets treated in every jurisdiction around the world is where our AI native tax engine comes in. I wasn't going to show this, but very quickly, what our TRAM does, which is the name of our AI native tax engine, is that it's indexed the entire corpus of tax law around the world. And what we can do is we can instantly generate determinations for each tax code, provide reasoning backed on citations from statute law, administrative guidance, case precedents that we ingest and monitor in every country. And so what that means is we have highly granular tax codes that are always kept up to date, are always accurate according to changes in the law. And I will also add that, whilst that is a huge game changer for indirect tax, we're also starting to point TRAM, that system, towards these other areas of compliance like input tax, which will help reduce your tax bill because that's the tax you pay on your expenses, against things like withholding tax, tariffs as well. So we're very excited about that. So yeah, look, that's the quick demo. To summarize, what makes us different again is that true end-to-end automation across all those compliance workflows delivered by those local rails, scalable, accurate tax research delivered by that AI native tax engine, quick and easy setup in less than 24 hours, all at a flat rate per region per month that doesn't break the bank.
Outstanding. Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
I've never seen anyone as excited to talk about compliance as you are, Nick.
Well, we've got to make tax sexy. That's my goal.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. Well, let's do some questions. I think that everybody would love some insight from you three. As organizations think about billing, planning, and tax, especially indirect taxes, needing to talk together, needing to talk and connect. What are your thoughts on that? The companies are scaling internationally faster than ever. And the connectivity of those three things is very important. So what are your thoughts on that? Oh,
Ria,
Ria,
you're on mute.
I am. Yeah, I mean, I think like most of the problems in the finance domain crop up because you have disparate data and there's a lack of connectivity and integration between the different operations that you're doing, and ultimately your success in those operations is predicated on having a sort of a universal kind of contextual view of everything that needs to feed that operation. One of the things I think that we've seen in our domain is like historically order to cash was a very fragmented workflow. So you might be using a different system for metering to billing, and CPQ is distinct from that. So actually you have two different product catalogs servicing your sales engine and then your finance engine. And you might be doing revenue recognition somewhere else. And again, it's you start getting these sort of conflicting sources of truth. And so certainly like, unification for us and consolidation of data has been really important. But when we think about kind of interfacing with other systems, I mean, like undoubtedly for all of us, like, of course, everybody integrates deeply and natively with the ERP, that, it's really important that ultimately everything lives in the GL. But I think for the specific things that each of us are solving for, these are things that the GL doesn't do particularly well, or at all, in some cases. And so, I think we want to be best in class in the area we're playing, but have very strong integration and connectivity and synchronization with the ERP, in our case, with the CRM as well. And yeah, certainly for, especially in your world, Nick, with respect to what you're doing, I mean, you know, tax and billing go very closely hand in hand. Like you're issuing invoices, you need accurate tax calculations against those invoices. Billing systems hold the critical data that a compliance engine is going to need to be able to, accurately kind of run those filings or drive the right compliance for the business. And so the last thing I'll say on this is we are very excited about some of the new players in the market, not only for the much more intuitive user experience, but also for the way that sort of embedded AI-based functionality is really changing these workflows. And, we are leaning in very strongly towards partnerships. We have an integration with Avalara, but I will say, point blank, like the type of feedback we get from, customers who are using Sphere versus an Avalara is just dramatically different. And so, we're happier, frankly, if our customers are using some of the more modern platforms to run the other parts of their finance stack, versus some of the legacy incumbents.
Yeah, what I'll just add there as well is very much see the same thing, that people just want one integrated system. Like they don't want this patchwork of like advisors and different software. And I think it comes down to the fact that they need like clean, unified data. And it's even more important now, especially in my world, because like all of these tax authorities right now are getting super aggressive on clamping down on this type of tax. There's more audits, there's more notices. And that is where the data is really put under the microscope. And so you need that system, that tax system that speaks nicely with the billing system, that is all unified in one place. You don't want it sitting with 20 different local advisors in different countries. So yeah, that is something we see time and time again. People they just want to consolidate in this one system that talks nicely with each other and gives clean audit ready data.
One of the things I've observed as well is that I definitely think a lot of the more modern CFO stack players put more emphasis on integration and ease of mapping and transferring data between systems as well. I think like, for anyone who's used some of the kind of legacy players in our spaces, implementations are very hard and time consumptive, and both getting data in and data out, mapping data in the right way, can be very cumbersome. But I think today, like, we recognize that like we don't have walls around where we're operating. Revenue is like, our product data that we capture feeds product entitlements in a company's own product. It feeds, a tax engine for some very critical workflows there. The revenue data that we capture will feed into a data warehouse that will feed an FP&A platform like Abacum. And it's like really critical that that's easy to synchronize. And so I think like sometimes people don't look at that piece enough when adopting a software solution, and it can be a really big limiting factor.
Yeah,
Yeah, what I see. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
yeah, maybe just last kind of comment as well. I think when I like tying it together with Sequence and Sphere here, the data, the CFO is kind of like more like the chief business performance officer now, and needing to be able to see everything. So what's coming in from from Sequence, all of the KPIs, the revenue data, it needs to be combined with your headcount data, with maybe your product data, definitely your accounting data from your GL, right? So you can see a picture and also what's driving the business. So bringing that data is important, and we see that a lot. I think the other component when it comes to taxes, right? You gotta be ready for it, but you also need to be able to plan for it. And so, while maybe we're not having a direct integration with Sphere today, you definitely have a major use case where you need to plan for what those potential taxes are within Abacum, and knowing what that's going to look like in the future. And so, kind of connecting the dots there, that's where I see the most relevance between us three as well. So.
Bro, what we're seeing now in all of these companies is that the folks that are winning are collaborating, and connecting the dots is happening everywhere. So that is great. Eric, I love that question. We're going to get to that in 1 second. I do want to ask our panelists today, just If we think about organizations that are trying to scale globally fast, what are some common mistakes you're seeing some of these finance teams making, and what kind of advice could you give?
I can go first.
Yeah,
It's
go
Yes,
for it.
please do. Please do.
pretty obvious for me, but I see a lot of companies underestimate compliance. Then they get sprung with a notice. It's a panic. The fines are like meaningful, especially internationally. Because we're not talking about like 7% to 9% sales tax, we're doing like 21% that. So it can be big. Uh, and not just, from a cost perspective, impacting that bottom line, but also it stops deals. Like, we're talking about withholding tax, that can be something that gets stuck in negotiation. It can, drag on. Sometimes it kills the deal. So we look at it also very much from like a revenue, top line perspective and unlocking new markets, making it as easy as selling locally. But yeah, I see a lot of people underestimating it. And it hits the bottom line and it also kills deals. That's my view.
The triple
I
But
mean,
whammy, Nick. Nobody wants that. That doesn't sound good at all.
no.
Go ahead, Ria.
yeah, God, I can't imagine how messy some of the compliance stuff gets when you're in, especially in Europe. It's feels,
Mm.
yeah. I think for us, we've had a pretty global mindset from day one. Like most of our customers are in the US, but many of these businesses, some of the names that Nick and I shared earlier are companies that are, growing very quickly into new markets in the UK and Europe, LATAM, the Middle East, and others. Um, I think one thing we see pretty often is actually like people underestimate how much pricing might need to change when they enter into new markets. It's not just about kind of flipping the currency. Often pricing is determined by what the market standard is. And, it's fairly common that people will have, a set of product SKUs that pertain to a particular market and actually a different set of product SKUs and even different pricing models that pertain to another because the market landscape and competitive dynamics are different in those markets. And that can go, having the agility to implement that is actually can go a really long way into making sure that you're successful in that market. And one of the reasons we've taken a kind of global outlook, I think the reality today is like most software companies will traverse, international borders very, very quickly. They won't be constrained to say we're selling into one market. Um, the idea of designing kind of agility on the pricing, quoting, billing side is to, I think, really service that mindset that we want companies to be able to have the flexibility to change things basically and adapt to these new markets as they scale. So that's just something that we've observed with internationalization. In terms of tool stacks, I mean, I think that one of the things that gets tricky when you go into a new market is like, does my tech stack like service these new markets that I'm going into? With a lot of these spend management players. I mean, we're based in New York and London. We use Ramp in the US. We use it in the UK too, but there's a ton of limitations. And I really wanted to resist having to get another spend management, expense management tool in the UK to, you don't want to be operating two of these. Obviously, the GL, the ERP, that's also like, that can get pretty complex as sometimes, especially when you're entering European markets and you see people look towards kind of multi-entity consolidation. But all to say, maybe a piece of advice is like, as you're adopting products, in any of these spaces, to think about the potential traversability into new markets you might be going into and whether that will suffice for that because you don't want to be maintaining, two billing platforms and two, two expense management tools, etc.
Well, hey, Dean, will you repeat that question for me one more time?
Yeah, no, just, organizations scale globally super
Mhm.
fast, right? Like from the jump, essentially, just like Ria just said. And from a planning side, what are some mistakes that you're seeing them make that they could easily avoid?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, what we're doing, right, is leveraging our strengths. And one of our strengths is the ability to have a lot of flexibility to handle a lot of different entities and model across those entities and also handle the different currencies. with AI, there's a lot of different applications that are coming to market really fast, and you can leverage AI to probably get parity like 80% with some solutions. There's a very big barrier of entry into the market for FP&A software still. Think about all the tabs in your Excel model and how those exponentially get bigger and the calculations get bigger and the thing eventually you can't even open. So building a calculation engine that understands how to manage different entities and all the dimensionality is critical. And Abacum is one of the only solutions that has the ability to do that and also do it with ease. A lot of the solutions that can do it are extremely expensive and take a long time to get up and running. So being able to connect to your data quickly, have control of your data, and then also get some quick wins as a finance leader is important. And so as you're looking at a platform, right, I think it's important to like make sure to really understand like how are you going to work with these different entities? Are you able to connect to these different books, right? You've got the different chart of accounts in Spain than what you have in the US. How is that going to flow through, and how are you going to make it kind of a standardized view for management reporting? And those aren't things that you might think about out of the gate right away, or you might not think about like how the different currencies are going to be reported on in the system. You might be thinking about some of the other core use cases. And so, yeah, as you're growing, those are things that, especially, there's a lot of companies growing really fast. Like make sure you're set up to scale quickly, because before you know it, you can have an opportunity to go acquire a company or open an office in another country, and the solution you have in place today isn't a good fit. And I think that's a big differentiator for Abacum, is that we can start with a company that is smaller, that can come in at the right price point. And to Ria's point earlier, depending on where you're at globally too, like we're very sensitive to like what the standards are, to make sure that we can drive our solution to the market across the world. And then we can scale with companies. And like I mentioned earlier, we've got public companies like CoreWeave, we've got Dish Networks on the platform, we've got Strava, everybody's workout app that's doing a bunch of crazy reporting and analysis in our platform. So we can handle all the complexity as you scale too.
That you brought
Yeah.
up
I think we've got to
finance
get to,
leaders.
I was going to say we've got to get to Eric's question because it's a
Yeah,
good
we're going to
one.
do it right now. Finance leaders need quick wins. And there is a mindset of CFOs, right? The legacy CFO versus the modern CFO. What insight would you give today to kind of get these modern CFOs going to adopt, technologies like yours? What would you say? What are you seeing in your customers today, and what insight could you give?
I think maybe I can take this one first. Just Eric's question was around adoption with non-tech customer base. We've got a huge um, array of different industries within the platform, and I think what I see with these with the non-tech is I just want to get the rest of the team in the platform so we can actually adopt this as a company, right? And in making it easy for non-finance users to get into the platform is going to drive the adoption, and then also making it easier to use too. Like a lot of tech companies might have people that are more tech forward and that can pick it up faster. So I think that balance of like flexibility and an ease of use, at least for us on the planning side, is critical for adoption across non-tech industries, and also the connectivity to all different types of platforms and ERPs, because there's a wide range that are used across different industries as well.
I
What are
mean, I
you
think
seeing in your, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, I think it's a really interesting question. And I mean, in our space, like people have been burnt by such massive, long implementations on the billing side that it is like the prospect of having to do that again is, is really painful to consider. I think, like, I think everybody today talked about ease of implementation being a really, really strong USP. And it's very easy to throw that word around, and for people, to it's hard for people to trust that. And I think like we now have, the scale of customers where we can show those deployments, and we can actually say like, look, just like upload all of your existing contracts in the system, and we'll show you how we can shadow where you are in your existing billing system, maybe even give you some insight as to where you might have missed revenue. So I think being able to actually see what that migration looks like, experience what it looks like, and be able to believe that these migrations are possible, and in weeks or months instead of years is, I think, is a really big part of willingness to move away from legacy systems. And kind of on this oxymoron point, I mean, like, I guess modern CFOs can exist in legacy organizations. It's a mindset thing. And I do think it's interesting what we're seeing across the CFO stack in like real appetite to explore new players who are, I think leapfrogging incumbents in terms of even forget AI, like their data models and their architecture being so much more flexible in the way that they're designed to create value.
In less than 60 seconds, what are you seeing when you think about legacy CFOs and modern CFOs that are jumping onto your tech stack? What are you seeing?
Um, I see like so some of our customers are crying at insane rates, and some getting ready for pre-IPO and whatnot. And I'm always amazed at and where I see the most modern CFOs or modern controllers is they're just operating on such a lean team. It's small, like they don't have that many people. And I sort of see the most inefficient teams as just they're throwing bodies at things. And, so even, and I'm not even talking about what's in Sphere. Like, yes, obviously we help with the automation of the tax side, but the most modern teams and the ones that seem to be crushing it seem to be the ones that have built automation within their system. Maybe they're using Abacum, maybe they're using Sequence, and maybe it's a combination of those things. But they're small, they're lean, they're not like super stressed out either. It's not as though they're burning the midnight oil and doing crazy things. Um, so I think it's just about seeing where you can trim, like, I guess, trim the fat of, manual workflows, putting automation in there, um, and having that clean data set. And as I said, these are big companies who are operating with a head of finance and a controller and maybe a tax professional. Like, that's it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Rohit nails it right there. Change management is going to be everything. Thank you so much, Nick, Ryan, Ria. This is fantastic. You guys are making a real impact in the office of the CFO globally and with native AI. If anybody has any more questions, please reach out to these folks directly. This has been very insightful. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for joining, everyone. Bye.
Yes, thank you.